What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Jordan Lauby. Here we are again with another episode of Washed Up Wednesdays on a Thursday. Oddly enough, that's how we're going to have to do it this week. I had some things come up yesterday, so I wasn't really able to get back here in time and make sure the show was done right the way I wanted to. So we're going to push it to today. As you can see, obviously wearing the Star Wars shirt. Disney Plus came out 2 days ago, so everyone's loving that. That's a big hit. This is my support for it. Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers, baby. That's how we're going to do it today. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Colin Kaepernick, back in the midst of the media. He's getting a workout and a combine Saturday in Atlanta. 11 teams have already confirmed that they're going. That is going to be the Dolphins, the Jets, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Browns, the Broncos, the Lions, the Bucks, the Redskins, and even your New England Patriots are going to be there. So that is kind of strange that they'll be there for that. So maybe preparing for Tom Brady's departure at the end of the season. Who knows what's going to happen with him? Who knows what's going to happen with Colin Kaepernick? I think if he really has been training every single day for the past 3 years, I think he's going to ball out. He's going to have a really good combine and a really good showing. I'm not going to share my opinion on the whole kneeling situation, if he's right, if he's wrong, should he be allowed to do it, should he not. When he was early in his career, he still is a great athlete. No one can take that away from him. Really changed the definition of dual threat quarterback. He brought it to another level, which is really cool to see by him. Give me a second. I'm just swapping my screens around so we can get – oh, no, we're not going to get the comments this time around. So just text me, message me if you have a question or something like that. It doesn't look like I'll be able to read anyone's comments while having my notes up, but we can just go kind of off tangent here. If you have something to say it now. We'll try to get those moments going throughout this episode. But either way, great athlete, really changed the game, had a great game against the Packers, 189 yards rushing, most ever by a quarterback in a single game. So he really stepped it up to the next level. Brought them to Super Bowl. A lot of people like to argue he took over halfway through the season of a team that was already, I believe, 9-1 when he took over for Alex Smith. He brought a lot more to the table as far as athleticism is for Alex Smith. So Jim Harbaugh thought it was the right choice. Stick with Kaepernick, see what we can do. He goes to Super Bowl. My fan's on. Give me 1 second. All right, hopefully you guys don't hear that because that is somewhat annoying. But either way, let's get right back into it. Goes to the Super Bowl, barely loses down there. And I believe they were in New Orleans. They were in the Superdome. Almost come back against the Ravens after the blackout. And he came back, had a solid second season, did well, got to the NFC Championship, threw a pick to not to Richard Sherman. He tipped it back to Malcolm Smith there. So and then after that, they kind of plummeted. There's a great video by SB Nation on YouTube, the collapse of the 49ers. They don't really talk about Kaepernick a whole lot. They just talk about the organization as a whole and what happened to a lot of players in the midst. In my personal opinion, I think when the 49ers defense got worse and worse, Kaepernick started to play worse. And yes, you can make the argument that, well, teams with good defenses are obviously going to get a good play from their quarterback. Teams with bad defenses, their quarterback's not going to be on the field as much. There's going to be less time of possession for that offense. They're not going to be able to do as much with the ball. He still had a good QBR, was in the top half of quarterbacks in the league. I'm not going to take that away from him. He did a good job. But what matters more, QBR or wins? He wasn't winning. If he really wants to be that impact player, he's going to need to start winning when he comes back into the league. I really believe that at some point he will get picked up. I don't think it'll be this season. I think maybe in the offseason. If he was going to get picked up in the season, I don't think this would have been a story. I think it would have been a bigger story that he got picked up and teams knew he was going to get picked up after this workout. So give credit where credit is due. Kaepernick, hopefully he can work hard, show out in the combine that he's getting down in Atlanta. Definitely, I feel like a team will pick him up in the offseason, but I don't think he'll get picked up this year. Unless the team needs it, like the Lions. If Jeff Driscoll goes down, Matt Stafford doesn't come back because he literally broke part of his back. Who knows? Maybe the Lions will pick him up, try to make a final playoff push. Who knows? But they are one of the teams going. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Colin Kaepernick going forward. If he can play, that's awesome. If he can't play, then he just keeps working hard, just like the rest of us free agents. Um, Getting into the next topic, the Jets GM, I can't remember his name for some reason, but he said Adam Gase is going to be the Jets head coach through 2020. A lot of Jets fans might be mad about this. I know if I was a Jets fan, I would be pretty mad about it as well. Um, it's just I don't think Adam Gase has ever been a good coach in the league. He had one playoff season when Miami actually had a solid roster. I think he's a great coordinator. When he was with the Broncos, he was doing really well over there. Especially, but I mean, you have Peyton Manning as your quarterback. How do you not do well over there in Denver with him? And you have all the weapons in the world. Now he's working with a second-year starter who I've been saying since day one is going to be a bust, and he's playing like he's going to be a bust. Shined at the end of last season, but has not played the same since. You could say, oh, yeah, he got mono, but come on. You're an NFL athlete. You should be able to recover from. I know mono's a major disease. That sounds awful. Yes, mono is a major disease, but you gotta come back strong. You're this far into the season. You're going against a bad Giants team, and you can't. He started well in the first half, but then started to fall off towards the end of the game. So I mean, take what you can with that. Hopefully, Adam Gase can turn something around. Le'Veon Bell has been unproductive. Yeah, he's had some injuries, but it's Le'Veon Bell. A couple of years ago, he's one of the best running backs in the league behind one of the best offensive lines in the league. Now he comes up to New York, has one of the worst offensive lines in the league and is doing nothing. David Johnson a couple of years ago had one of the worst offensive lines in the league and still put up almost 1,000 yards in both stats and over 20 touchdowns. So, again, we'll see what happens with Adam Gase going forward. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Jack, let me see your text. Will the Bills make the playoffs? Ooh, that is actually a good question. They have one of the harder schedules going forward into the season. They got to play the Patriots again. I don't think they played the Jets twice, and they definitely need to play Miami again. So give them 2 more easy wins there. That puts them at 8 wins on the year. I have them losing this week, so let's say that puts them 8-4. They have a good shot, and the AFC does not have a lot going on for it right now. So I do think they're going to sneak in, maybe definitely get a wild card. Pats are winning that division outright, as they always do. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Bills there. But last bit of news here, Brandon Brooks. A lot of people said he's been the best guard in football for a long time, and the 29-year-old is getting paid like it. He is now the highest paid guard in the NFL. He tore his Achilles 10 months ago, and now he's the highest paid guard. It's 4 years, $54.2 million, and $30 million of that is guaranteed. Absolutely insane. Good for our guy over there, Brandon Brooks. A lot of people can argue Zach Martin's better. A lot of people are saying Quentin Nelson's going to be the best guard in NFL history when his career is all said and done. I think Quentin Nelson's a great player. I think within the next 2-3 years, he'll get a huge extension and he'll be the highest paid guard. He has absolutely transformed that Colts offensive line and has proven to be one of the most dominant players on the offensive line on any given team. So he's really proving himself to be that next top dog. He's gotten better and better week in and week out, had an immediate impact. So I think he'll end up taking the reins from Brandon Brooks. Maybe Zach Martin takes the reins because I know he's playing really well, but the Cowboys don't really like to pay their offensive line. They like to pay their skill players a lot more, but then again, who am I to judge? Jerry Jones is doing something right, but not everything right. Hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, so that's that. But Brandon Brooks, good for him, being the highest paid guard in the NFL. Great job. That was a long time coming. He really anchors down that whole entire Eagles offensive line. Good stuff there. Let's get into the game of the week. I got the Seahawks beating the 49ers. This isn't as much as a surprise as I wanted it to be. With George Kittle out, there was a lot going wrong for that offense. Emmanuel Sanders even left the game. So 2 of your biggest playmakers on the offensive side of the ball are gone. But this is a game of the year candidate. I still don't think it's better than the Rams-Seahawks game earlier this year when Zerloin missed the game-winning field goal. I still think that's game of the year. This game is definitely up there with the Saints-Texans game. And now, obviously, this game, easily a number 2 or number 3. But the 49ers and Seahawks defenses were playing absolutely baller. Jadeveon Clowney scored a touchdown. DeForest Buckner scored a touchdown. DJ Jones early in the first quarter absolutely ran over Joey Hunt and got into the backfield and sacked Russell Wilson. That's one of the most dominant bull rushes you'll ever see from a nose tackle position. So doing real good there. Jason Myers missed a possible game-winning field goal last week. They still beat the Buccaneers in overtime, but he redeems himself this week, getting a huge OT field goal, doing a great job. Chase McLaughlin comes over, and he absolutely shanks it. Now, again, this is the same argument a couple of weeks ago with Vinatieri. Well, whose fault is it? Is it the long snapper Kyle Nelson's fault? Is it McLaughlin's fault? Is it Wisnowski's fault? That was a great spin and hold, a lot better than Rigoberto's, but that ball still might have been spinning when he made contact and that caused it to trail off. So because the laces did get around, I couldn't tell if the ball was stopped yet or not. So tough call there, but if you can get the laces around, you got to make the kick, and he absolutely shanked it. So tough to see there. Robbie Gould 100% makes that kick, even with how iffy he was playing this season as it was. But awesome game overall. I think if George Kittle plays that game, Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright have a bigger workload for themselves, and they probably don't get out of San Francisco with a win. But either way, good job for the Seahawks, giving the 49ers their first loss on the season and no more undefeated teams in the league. Good job there, Russell Wilson and company. Also, threw a second pick of the season. So give credit to the 49ers defense where credit is due. We'll talk more about them later. But honorable mention, I got the Packers beating the Panthers, even though the score didn't show that it was really I guess it was a close game because it was an 8-point game. You still would have needed the 2-pointer. And even though it was relatively low scoring, it still was an awesome game, played in the snow. Came down to the final stop on Christian McCaffrey on literally the 1-inch line. When I was watching it live, I thought he got in. I don't agree with the third down call. I really think you should have given it to McCaffrey on third. Granted, you give it to him on fourth and he doesn't get it because the Packers were geared up and they brought everyone on that play. On third down, I think that's when you give it to him or at least do some sort of option. Kyle Allen does have speed, so try to get into the edge, maybe run an inside zone read, maybe do something there. But I just don't like Ron Rivera's play calling at the end of that there. But the Panthers defense just needs to force more turnovers. Luke Kuechly did absolutely nothing that game against a good running attack and good offensive unit of the Packers. They really took him out of the game. No turnovers at all for the Panthers. And if they force maybe one or two, that's a much different game for them, and they come away with a win there. But Aaron Jones continuing to dominate. He had 3 touchdowns. I believe we're going to talk about him a little bit later. He might be in the Peakers Leakers. We'll talk about him. But great job, Aaron Jones. He's been the heartbeat of that Packers offense all season, regardless of how Aaron Rodgers has played. He has been consistent. He's played well. Maybe 1 or 2 games he wasn't playing that great, but he's still balling out, getting everything done that he needs to get done. The other honorable mention this week, this one I'm excited to talk about. It is the Raiders and Chargers game. That was a really fun Thursday night game. They have a very underrated offense, the Raiders over there. Phillip Rivers, again, throwing 3 picks. He's been one of the most turnover-worthy quarterbacks this year. He hasn't played that great as he did last year. But the Raiders' offense looks really sharp. Derek Carr continuing to be very accurate. Josh Jacobs pounding the ball as much as he can. Darren Waller's a viable threat there. Tyrell Williams, Zay Jones finally coming into his own. And imagine if they had Isaiah Crowell there as a nice 1-2 punch between Jacobs and Crowell. That would have been interesting to see this year. But Eckler needs to get more involved, in my opinion. He had 8 touches total last week. In games where he was getting 15 or more, they've been winning, and he's been doing absolutely baller. They just need to start getting him the ball more. Yes, Melvin Gordon's a very good running back. Yes, he's most likely your franchise running back if you can sign him to a big deal. But Eckler needs to start getting the ball. Your offense was firing on all cylinders whenever he was getting it back when Gordon was holding out. And as soon as he stopped getting the ball, your offense stopped working. So I think the Chargers need to get him more involved. And what about Eric Harris on that defense for the Raiders? What a story for him. So quick overview of him. Walked on as a D2 player. When he graduated, he went and worked at a chip factory. He paid his way to a CFL tryout, played in the CFL for 3 years, got picked up by the Raiders, and he absolutely balled out of his mind. He's been getting better and better every week very quietly. He's had minimal snaps, but whatever he's done with the snaps, he's really excelled at. He's done a great job. He had 2 picks. One went for 6. The other one he returned for a good amount. He probably could have had a good pick 6 there too if he got the right amount of blocking. But absolutely stellar game by him. A lot of people are going to start hearing his name a lot more, especially now with Joyner out and Carl Joseph landing on the IR. I think he's going to get a lot more playing time, and he's going to shine. Look for Eric Harris going forward in the future. At the halfway mark, let's get into surprise of the week. I got the Falcons beating the Saints. The 1-7 beats the 7-1. Both coming off a bye week. Both were completely rested. Both were pretty much healthy. How did the Saints lose that game? I'm going to tell you, it all came down to game plan. The Falcons are a good team when everyone is healthy. That's the other point you got to make there. Deion Jones back to full speed, playing really well. But the Saints, they just played really bad football. I'll get more into their offensive and defensive line later. But Michael Thomas still dominating, needs to find the end zone. Maybe that's the spark they need. Just try to find him. It's kind of like the Julio Jones thing that happened a couple of years ago. Whenever teams got in the red zone, they would just double and they would triple on Julio. And that's why he had 3 touchdowns a couple of years ago. Same thing's happening with Michael Thomas. He's putting up over 10 catches a game, over 100 yards a game, and he still can't find the end zone. It's going to be Drew Brees is going to have to find a way to get him a ball in the end zone if the Saints want to get back in their winning track. Yes, it's one loss. But still, you can't lose to a team like the Falcons who are 1-7 and basically dismantled. Also, Dan Quinn stopped calling the defense. That's another interesting point. Now he's focusing on just being a head coach, making subs when he needs to make subs, adjusting the game plan when he needs to adjust it. But good for him, just handing over the reins to their linebackers coach to call the plays, and they really stifled a very good Saints offense. Honorable mention surprise, I got the Titans beating the Chiefs. Ryan Tannehill is now 3-1 since taking over. Yes, they played a couple of bad teams. They played the Chargers and the Bucs, who Bucs and Chargers have still been in very close games all year long, even though the records don't show that. But still 3-1 in that process, lost by 10 points to a good Panthers team last week. And then he comes in and shocks the Chiefs in Nashville there. Derrick Henry shiny. He got over 20 carries. 188 yards. I believe he had 2 touchdowns, not 3. That's correction by me. And special teams blunders by the Chiefs led them to this loss. James Winchester had a bad snap on a field goal. And then I think Colquitt is still the punter there. Correct me if I'm wrong, someone. But he just chucked it to the sideline. No one released. So bad job there. And then they let up a blocked field goal at the end of the game. I think Bucker drills both of those field goals because those are definitely in his range. But you got to give the guy a shot. I mean, Winchester, that's one of the first times I've ever seen him throw a bad snap. He's been in the league about 6 years now. First time I've seen him throw a bad snap. Tough day in the office for them. Hopefully they'll get it corrected, see what's going on with them. Dolphins beat the Colts. Another game with special teams blunders. Brian Hoyer also couldn't get it done through 3 really bad picks. Both teams played absolutely sloppy, but Fitzmagic somehow still alive and well as they pulled together another win. I thought there was a clear pass interference against Eric Ebron in the back right corner of the end zone that they didn't call. Then they threw a little stick route to him, and he wasn't able to get the first down. He was stopped just before it, giving the Dolphins the win as they turned it over on downs. Vinatieri misses another field goal. If he makes that field goal, the position they're in at the end of the game, he can try nail a game winner, and they could go in and possibly win that 18-16. Just tough day in the office again for all special teams across the nation for the most part, except obviously for the Seahawks. So good for the Seahawks there having good special teams. Let's get into the next segment. We're going to go through peakers and leakers. This is where we talk about who was good in the week and who was bad. I try not to do repeats. I realize I've been having a couple. Aaron Jones has been on here a couple times, so he's not going to be on there this week. I've been leaning a lot more towards offensive players. Now this week leans a lot more towards defense. Lamar Jackson, even though he had an absolutely awesome game against the Bengals, is not on here. He was on here last week. I think he's been on here another time before that. So if you see new names on here, that's on purpose, even though some guys may perform better throughout the week. So let's get right into it. Honorable mention, Peaker, Jadeveon Clowney. Really good job by him. 5 tackles, 1 TFL. He had a sack, 5 quarterback hits, disrupting Jimmy G all day long. 1 fumble recovery that went for a touchdown. Great job, Jadeveon. Number 3, I have Jamal Adams. He had 9 tackles, 2 for loss, brought in 2 sacks and 2 more quarterback hits. He had a pass deflection and came in and ripped the ball out of Daniel Jones' arms and brought it all the way to the house on the other side. Jamal Adams playing like an absolute freak lately. Hopefully he gets a superstar X Factor on Madden 20. We'll see if he gets that, but he's been clearly one of the best, if not the best safety in the league so far this season. Number 2, we got Derrick Henry. As I said, 23 carries for 188 yards, 2 catches for 3 yards, and he added 2 total touchdowns on the day. Great job by him. And my number 1 peaker of the week, this is why we call them peakers. They're players that we never heard of. They're players that perform like no one expected them to. Number 1, undisputed, unanimous, going to Eric Harris of the Raiders. 2 tackles, 3 pass deflections, 2 interceptions, and 1 to the house, which gave them enough of a lead to beat the Chargers in their home turf. Carl Joseph, also great interception at the end of the game there. Shout out to him sealing the deal. But now getting to the leakers of the week, Luke Kuechly, 4 tackles, 1 solo, and no picks, no fumbles, no fumble recoveries. Nothing for Luke Kuechly. Absolutely shut down. Every play they ran, every play the Packers ran went somewhat in a different direction of him, but he still got to scrape and he still got to make plays. 1 solo tackle isn't going to cut it for one of the best linebackers in the league. Number 3, Cooper Kupp, been one of the best receivers in the NFL this year. 4 targets, 0 catches. All of them were deflected with a mix of Minkah Fitzpatrick, Terrell Edmonds, and Joe Hayden playing on him. So tough day in the office for Cooper Kupp. Hopefully the Rams can get him more involved. Number 2, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say a group of players, and it's the Saints' offensive and defensive lines. Played absolutely awful. So their offensive line, or defensive line for that matter, is tied 12th in the NFL for sacks going into this week. They had 24 sacks. Their offensive line was tied 2nd in sacks allowed. They allowed 11 going into this week. The Falcons they're in last for sacks on the season. They had 7 going into this week. And the Saints had the Falcons offensive line, is 16th in sacks allowed, but they were 6th in total quarterback hits with 60. Let's get into how the Saints offensive and defensive line did. The Saints had 1 sack and 5 quarterback hits. Not a good look against one of the worst offensive lines against the pass. And the Saints offensive line allowed 6 sacks and 11 quarterback hits against the bad defensive line, and you're one of the best offensive lines in the league, and you just let up sack after sack. Yes, their defensive schemes were good, but most of the time the Falcons were only bringing 4 guys when they got those sacks. The QB hits came when they brought 5. Drew Brees is recognizing, okay, I got to get rid of this ball as soon as I can. They're bringing 5. But when they brought 4, I don't know what happened because you got Andrews Peters playing well, Eric McCoy playing like one of the best centers in the league, and he's a rookie. The best offensive tackle duo with Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk. And Larry Warford, as he's done a great job filling in as a guard spot. You have one of the best offensive lines in the league going against one of the worst defensive lines in the league, and that's the reason they lose, is how bad their offensive line played, and equally how bad their defensive line played. I'm going to get into Cam and Jordan a little bit. NFL players can do whatever they want when they're coming off the edge. They can stand up. They can go to 4-point, 3-point. They can literally just stand in a normal 2-point stance. They can stagger. They can do whatever they want. I have no place to say you should not be doing this and you should not be doing that based on your position. But if history shows anything, let's take Chandler Jones of the Cardinals for an example. 2 years ago, he had 17 sacks when they ran a 3-4 and he was a stand-up defensive end. One of the best. He led the NFL in sacks that year. When he played for the Patriots, he was a stand-up outside backer, got a lot of sacks and a lot of TFLs. In Steve Wilkes' system, it was a 4-3 and he had to put 2 hands or 1 hand in the dirt. His sacks dramatically dropped. His tackles for loss dramatically dropped. And he was nowhere involved, and he was getting double. Granted, he was getting double teamed, but even against one-on-one, wasn't getting the same jump off the line. And also, you're coming in at a different angle. So how your hands move, how you tip your body, how you rip across guys, how you spin is going to be completely different standing up than coming out of a 3-point or 4-point stance. Cameron Jordan yesterday had a lot of snaps where he was standing up. I didn't look at any other I didn't look in depth at a lot of other film this year. He has 8 sacks this year. I want to see how many of them were of him in the three-point stance or him standing up. He might have been standing up this whole year, and this is the first time I noticed it because of how bad he played. But I just think there's a huge discrepancy between guys standing up and guys in a three-point stance and how they perform and how they play. Khalil Mack is one of those guys who can do either or because he's just a freak athlete. But take a guy like Von Miller, he never has both hands in the ground. He's always coming out of a two-point stance and coming through and ripping through guys and swimming over them. That's what makes him an elite pass rusher, is because he's playing in a system that works for him. And he knows that he can stand up and come in on an edge rush. Calais Campbell, you never see him standing up coming in on an edge rush. He's always got four hands in the dirt. That's just my little spiel there on Cam Jordan and what these NFL defenses are doing now. He's not an outside linebacker. He's a defensive end. He is 300 pounds. Get your hand in the dirt and rush. Number one leaguer of the week, Saquon Barkley, absolutely terrible. 13 for 1 on the ground, 5 for 30 through the air. Absolute awful game. Yes, the Jets defense is good, but you're the playmaker. You're one of the most premier running backs in the league. Do something with it. At the 26-minute mark, let's get right down to the hitters and shitters. Week 10, I went 6 for 4. Jameis Winston was a hit at 18.3. Kareem Hunt was a hit, 14.4. Josh Reynolds and Rhett Ellison were shit, 7.9 and 7.2 respectively. And the Bears D hitting that cusp of 7, getting that big hit there for me. That was great. Shitters, I said Jared Goff was going to do bad against the Steelers defense. What did he do? He did shit. He got 3.7. I said Josh Jacobs was going to shit against the Chargers. Scoring that touchdown late gave him the cusp on that. 18.1 points there. He did get a hit. Zach Pascal, I said, had 2 solid weeks. How's he going to do against a bad Dolphin secondary? I said he was going to shit. He did exactly that, 4.6. I also said Jimmy Graham, not going to be a factor against the Panthers. Even with Luke Kuechly all over him, he's not going to be a factor. Luke Kuechly did nothing, but neither did Jimmy Graham. 7.9 points. He had 2 catches for 59 yards. That was it. And finally, I said the 49ers defense was going to shit against the Seahawks. They did not. They got 19 points. Great job by the Seahawks there. This week, my predictions for hitters and shitters. Hitter QB, I got Nick Foles against the Colts. Going to be a homecoming story for him. Not really homecoming, but he's coming back after a long injury to his clavicle. I say he does well against the Colts this week. Colts are pretty battered up. It'll be interesting to see how that game goes. Melvin Gordon against the Chiefs. Chiefs have one of the worst run defenses in the league. If Melvin Gordon can do something against them, that's a great hit for him. So good job, Melvin Gordon. Let's see if he can hit. This is going to be a shot in the dark. N'Keal Harry against the Eagles. N'Keal Harry hasn't really played a whole lot. And yes, he was coming up IR, and yes, he's probably not going to get used a whole lot. But you're playing the worst secondary in the league, and you need a big receiver who can just go up and get it. Give it to N'Keal Harry. I think he'll do well. Darren Waller against the Bengals. He hasn't really made a whole lot of noise lately, but I think he'll make a big splash against the Bengals, especially with how Mark Andrews did last week, scoring 2 touchdowns. And my defense, I got the Steelers defense against the Browns. Steelers defense has been absolutely baller this year, especially since they got Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think they're going to do a really good job stifling that Browns team. I think the Browns are still going to generate a good amount of points, but I just think the Steelers are going to make a lot of turnovers, which is what's going to give them the upper hand and make them a hitter for this week. Shitters. Mitch Trubisky against the Rams. Yeah, he threw 3 touchdowns last week, but this is a Rams team that just had a rest. I think they come in and they stifle Mitch Trubisky. Mark Ingram against the Texans. I don't like him against the Texans. I think they have a good run-stopping defense, even without J.J. Watt. But I think Lamar Jackson is going to get a lot more time to shine, and so are his receivers and tight ends. Mark Ingram, not so much. Chris Godwin against the Saints. I don't think he's going to have that big of a game. He's going against a good pass defense. Hopefully the Saints pick it up and come back with vengeance against the Bucs this week. Kyle Rudolph against the Broncos. He had a big 2-touchdown game, but I think the Broncos defense is playing a lot better this second half of the season. I think not second half, but second half of their season so far. Their defense is starting to pick it up, and they're going to shut them down. And last hitter of the week, I got the Panthers defense against the Falcons. I think the Falcons offense is going to fire on all cylinders going into this week. Even without Devontae Freeman and Austin Hooper, I still think they're going to find a lot more weapons with Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. And then Brian Hill, I think, is going to make a big splash this week. Look for him also to be a hitter. Forgot to mention him. He's not my main hitter here, but pick him up in your leagues if you can. Wrapping up on the last minute, I know I had 2 rants in this episode, but we got to wrap this up quick. Week 11 game picks. Week 10, I went 7 for 6, puts me at 85, 62, and 1 on the year. And now getting week 11. Browns against the Steelers, Thursday Night Football going down in half an hour. I got the Browns beating the Steelers. This is when the Browns are going to start getting on track. You beat a really good Bills team. You go into, you come home in Cleveland. You go ahead and beat the Steelers. They were home last week too, but that's neither here nor there. They get the win no matter what. I got the Cowboys beating the Lions on the road. The Colts are going to beat the Jags, even with Nick Foles back. I got the Bills beating the Dolphins on the road. Dolphins are no way getting a 3-game win streak. I got the Vikings beating the Broncos. I got the Saints beating the Bucs on the road. Saints getting a big redemption game there. Buccaneers cannot string 2 wins together for their life. I got the Jets beating the Redskins on the road. Dwayne Haskins is not going to get it done. The Jets defense playing too good. I got the Panthers beating the Falcons. I got the Ravens beating the Texans. 49ers beating the Cardinals, even without George Kittle. But it will be a close one. You can count me on that. The Raiders beat the Bengals. That's an easy pick. Pats are going to beat the Eagles on the road. The Rams are going to beat the Bears on Sunday Night Football. And in Mexico City, I got the Chargers beating the Chiefs. Chiefs dropped 2 in a row. What's wrong with the Chiefs? We don't know. Maybe get some better defensive players, but that's going to do it for this week on Washed Up Wednesdays, taking place on a Thursday today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please share this. Please get this around. This will be posted right on my YouTube channel as soon as the live stream is over. So please share it, get it around. Just keep sending me your suggestions. Keep talking about what you want to see on the show. Keep sending me questions throughout the show as well. Let's get this shared around. Let's get this popular. Let's do everything we can. The power of social media and the internet has to come together and make something happen for me and my lowly dream of a great podcast. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night. This has been Washed Up Wednesdays. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Lowy. Have a great night, ladies and gentlemen.